In this video, we'll cover the final practice. I want to bring to light the user add command. We've already used the -m switch, but also want to point out the -g followed by a primary group. This sets the required primary group for the user account. The lab will also have us add the user to multiple other groups on the system. That is done with the uppercase G. So you see an example, we have a lowercase g followed with group 1. We also have a dash uppercase G followed by several groups, comma separated out, all ending in the username. Let's get our Oracle Linux system ready for the practice. You'll want to take a snapshot or checkpoint of your machine. In Hyper-V, you can use the action menu and click on checkpoint. Give it a name such as before practice 1. This will allow us to revert back to before we started the practice, so we can practice multiple times. Once you've completed a practice, you can always come back, right-click on the before practice 1 in your Hyper-V manager and apply the checkpoint. All of your commands, user accounts, and files that you created will be gone back to the point before we started the practice. Now let's get ready for the practice. We'll log into the command prompt as root. We'll create a user account. Called JoeBad. I always like to use the -m switch. It's not required for Red Hat, but other distros, the -m switch would be required for the home folder to be created. We'll set the password. You can use any password you wish. We need to create an archive folder. So we have the square box at the top of the lab created. On your final, you'll be presented with a system that has bad user accounts and some folders pre-created for you. So now we can actually start the practice. So we're working as an administrator, and we found a bad actor at our company. We need to lock his account and compress everything in his home folder into a file called evidence.tar.gz. So let's do that. Let's first lock the account. Use the passwd command followed with the -l for lock, followed with the username. In this case, it tells us JoeBad. That successfully locks the account and prevents any login attempts from this user. Now it says compress the home folder into the archive folder. It's best to change your location to the folder you wish to create the archive. So I've used my cd command, changed into archive. Now I'll use the tar command to compress all the files. I'll use a Z. I'll use C for create, and the Z was for gzip, designates the .gz compression standard. I'll use V so I can see what's going into the archive. F for file name. I'll follow it with the required file name in the paragraph. Evidence.tar.gz, followed with the home folder of JoeBad, /home/JoeBad. Press enter. you'll see that it will copy all the files in the home folder into the tape archive and compress it. A simple ls on the screen will show that the file is created within archive. So you have to remember the Z in C is for compress and create file, and F stands for file name. The V is an optional switch. It just shows the files that are being placed in it. Next, create 3 groups on the system. Use the group add command followed by the new group name. In our case, the group names are big, small, medium. Once the groups are created, we create user accounts. We use the user add with the -m switch, the little g, and specify the primary group. For Greg, it is big. We'll use an uppercase G to specify all other groups. Greg needs to also be a member of medium and small. Followed by the username of Greg. I'll do the same for the other 2 accounts. Zach, the primary group is users. The other groups Zach is a member of is just small. So I'll only have to put 1 group name after the capital G this time. Smith has a primary group of medium, and other groups on the system is simply small again. I can check each user by using groups followed by the username. The first group listed after the username is the primary group set. The other groups listed would be for the -G or other memberships. I'll need to set a password for all users to secret123. Use the passwd command followed with the username. You'll have to do this for each user. Once passwords have been set for all the users, they're able to log into the system. I'm going to clear my screen, and I'll start creating the directories. I need to create water under the root. Inside of water directory, I need to create the credits, assets, public, along with chemicals and hardware underneath assets. I'll use my mkdir command with the -p switch so that I can create all of the directories at once in a particular path. So I'll start with /water, /credit, press enter. Using my up arrow key, I'll backspace credit, and I will enter in assets and chemicals. Use my up arrow key again, remove chemicals, and replace it with hardware. Use my up arrow key a couple of times, or remove hardware and assets, replace it with public. I can use my tree command. If the command's not found, we can install it. I had a networking issue. I've resolved that. Now as you see, the tree command runs, and we can see all 5 directories that we created and that they're in the correct locations. Next part of the lab wants me to set the ownership. I'm going to wait on setting the ownership until I have all of the files created. I'm still in the archive folder, so I'm going to move on to this next bullet. I need to restore Greg's account. It has been deleted by the bad actor Joe Bad. So we're in the archive folder. Download the backup of Greg's home folder. I'll use the wget command, followed with the file location. The files are case sensitive. The G is uppercase for Greg. Once the file is downloaded, I'll use ls to verify that it has been downloaded correctly. Then I'll use my tar command with the dash uppercase C / switch noted in the instructions. And then I'll follow my normal switching /Z to filter it through the gzip compression, X for extract this time instead of C as we did before, VF, and the file name. The file name always has to follow the F switch. Now I can look into Greg's home folder and verify the files are placed correctly. I'll do a long listing of Greg's home folder, and since I extracted the files as the root account, Greg does not own the files restored to his folder. I need to use a ch own followed with Greg colon his primary group, which was big, followed with /home /Greg. I'm going to add into this after the chown a dash capital R to recursively change all the files and subfolders that are inside of his home folder. I'll use my up arrow key to bring back the ls-l command and verify that ownership of the restored files are correct. I've completed the restore the home folder for Greg account step. Do not forget, you must modify the ownership of the files restored. Next, I will create an invoice in the credit directory. We created all the subdirectories under water, so I'll change directory into water, followed by credit. My prompt changes to credit. I'll use the Vim editor to create invoice.txt. I on the keyboard, insert mode, and start typing. Escape to get out of insert mode. Use your :WQ to write and quit the file. It says written at the bottom of the screen. Set permission on index such the owner has read and write permission, the group has read permission, and others have no permission. ch mode, MOD, read and write is 6, read only is 4, and no permissions is 0. Using an ls-l shows me that the permissions are set correctly. Next, create a handbook text file in the public directory. I will change into water and into public. I'll use Vim again to create handbook.txt. I for insert. Type the message. Escape removes us from insert mode. We can use the :WQ to write and quit. And this time, the owner has read and write again. Group and others have read. So 6 is read and write, and 4 is read only. So I'll put 4 for the group and others, followed by the file name, handbook.txt. Verify the permissions are correct with ls-l. Now that the files are created and the permissions are set correct, I'm going to move back up to the setting owner and groups. The instructions want all files and subfolders within the respective folders in the instructions set with the proper user and group ownership. chown with the -r will set all subobjects correctly in the folders. Let's use Greg as the owner for credit, :big for the group, and specify the credit folder. We'll do the same for assets. This time it is Smith is the owner and Medium is the group owner. Zach and Small are the owners for the public directory. Now if I was to do ls-l, I'm looking at the water directory. I see assets, credit, and public are set per the instructions. I need to look inside of the directories and make sure all subdirectories and files are also set. So chemicals and hardware are also set. Inside of credit, we should have one file that has Greg and Big set. In public, should have Zach and Small set on the handbook.txt file. Make use of your ls-l on the test to verify permissions and ownership are correct. Now we move down to, we need to copy the files to protect them from accidental changes or deletion. They need to go to the archive folder. Change to the archive folder. This is where you want the files to be copied to. Use your copy command followed with the path to the invoice file and the handbook text file. The invoice is in credit. So you put /water/credit invoice.txt and period to say copy it here to the archive folder. The handbook file is in public. you put the path water public handbook.txt, end it with a period to say copied here into archive, followed with an ls command, verify the files have been copied. Next, create a symbolic link inside of the assets directory. Change to the directory you want the link to be created. In our case, assets, per the instructions. Create a link, ln-s for symbolic link. Let's put the full path for the handbook.txt file. That's the water directory, the public directory, and the file name handbook.txt. Put a period and press enter. Use your ls-l to verify that the handbook.txt symbolic link has been created and is pointing to a real file. It will be cyan in color. If it is red in color, a typo was made in the path. You will need to delete and recreate if it shows up as red. Be careful, compressed files show up as red. Those are correct. So evidence and Greg on the screen up there, those are not bad. Only a symbolic link, broken, will show up as red, and you'll need to remove that, not compressed files. We need to send a message to anybody that logs into the system. A message of the day can be entered using the Vim editor, modifying a file in the etc directory called MOTD, message of the day. I'll use insert. I'll enter the message. Again, using escape, :WQ to write and quit. Let's check and see if the message is working. I will log out and log in as one of the users, maybe Greg. As I log in, I get a message of the day. Be careful and always remember the cybersecurity safety rules. I'll exit again and log back in as root. The practice is basically complete. At this point, we have some questions to answer. How much space does the root partition have left? Disk free -H will show how much free space and use space is on each partition. As I look at the /, I see there's 28 gig available, 7.1 gig has been used. So 28G would be the answer to the first blank. How much space does the home folder use? Directory usage command -HS followed by the folder path. In our case, /home. We have 92 megabytes used for the home folder. So 92M for this blank. What commands can you use to view the contents of the handbook text file? Several. You can use cat, vim, nano, less. There's many commands to view the contents of the handbook.txt file. So only the command, not the full path or anything. What can you use to view the IP address? IP address list is one such command. Here, Ether0 has an INAT address in the 10.0 network. ifconfig will also show the IP address on a Linux system. nmcli is another command. They'll show the IP address on a Linux system. Any one of those three will be appropriate as the answer. View the routing table. A netstat-r. The command route. Both of these are correct ways to view the routing table. View the kernel version number. The quickest way, uname-a. This will view all information about the kernel and what type of system it is. We're running a kernel version 5.4.17. What command can you use to verify group membership of user Smith? Groups, followed by the username. It is case sensitive. His primary group is medium. The other groups he's a member of is small. Now at this point in time, I'll go ahead and revert. So if I want to practice again, I can. I'll right-click the before practice, apply. I'll click apply. It removes and jumps me back to that point in time before I created all of the users. I no longer have the archive directory created or any of the user accounts, so I could run through the practice a second time.